If you don't follow me on Twitter, then you probably don't know that I used to be a baker. So when I saw that Chantal posted a pie crust recipe, I knew I had to give it a try. She used a very basic olive oil pie crust recipe to make a chicken pot pie. Remember, this was supposedly during a healthy eating day, so here's what she had to say about it.
That chicken pot pie I made, oh my gosh. With just a few tweaks of a recipe, you can make it a lot healthier. You know, instead of using lard or butter for the pie, you can use like olive oil, and it makes actually a really, really flaky pie crust. Like, I was surprised. I was so intimidated by pie crust, but it was so easy, so easy. I just put it in the freezer for like maybe 10 minutes to make sure it's really cold. You roll it out, you plop it on top of the filling. That's it. I didn't put a bottom crust, just a top crust. And since, you know, my doctor was like, you know, you can have like a wheat toast or something, a little bit of whole grains per day. That's kind of like whole grain flour, you know, whole wheat flour, not whole grain. So,
And that, my friends, is what's so confusing about this recipe. She said her doctor said that she could have one piece of whole grain toast a day, and she had that with her first meal. Other than what she showed us, I couldn't find the exact recipe she used, and none of the similar recipes said that this was healthy. So what tweaks did she make exactly? Does she really think that a pastry dough with 2/3 cup of oil is healthy? That can't be right. As for my version of the dish, here's how I made it. I had some leftover grilled chicken and vegetables that I augmented with some frozen mixed vegetables. Everything went into a skillet with some packet gravy. I'm not actually going to bother putting up the recipe because, honestly, this just wasn't worth the calories. If you want to make your own version though, you basically just cut up some meat, mix it with vegetables and a sauce, and put on a pie crust. Now the crust recipe itself came together very easily. It's just like Play-Doh. I could tell from experience that this recipe with over 2 cups of flour would make enough for a 2-crust pie. So the first thing I did was cut it in half. Half the ingredients, half the calories, fat, and carbs, right? The trick to making a good pie crust is to not handle the dough too much because you don't want to create too much gluten. So roll it out very carefully, just enough to cover your pie tin. As you can see, I made mine in my trusty cast iron skillet. Half of the dough was just enough to cover the top of it. Perfect. It wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, but it all worked. After baking it for about 30 minutes, this is what you get. This is a 9-inch skillet, and I'm considering this 4 generous portions. I'm pretty sure Foodie would have used that oval baker that she used for her macaroni and cheese. Close up, this is what it looks like. All in all, this really wasn't that bad. The pie crust itself was very flaky, so to some extent I do believe she made this by herself. Mine pretty much ended up looking just like hers. Now, when it comes to the macros, we have to make a lot of assumptions here. Let's say that the filling is a wild card, because we don't know exactly what went into hers, so the filling doesn't matter. She didn't say anything about making any substitutions or cutting the recipe at all, so let's say she made the crust and put it on top of that pan, making 6 big portions. Here are the macros for Chantal's version, exactly as she showed it in the screenshot. 421 calories, 6.2 grams of protein, 24.8 grams of fat, and 43 grams of carbs. Not exactly light. And remember, we're just talking about the crust. So here's my version. 313 calories, 4.53 grams of protein, 18.48 grams of fat, and 32 grams of carbs. Despite being very easy to make and ending up very flaky, this crust was nothing special. If you really wanted to give it a try, I would add some spices, like maybe a little bit of garlic powder and black pepper. The thing I found most interesting about this whole process in making this video was that it illustrates just how lost Foodie is. She has no clue what she's doing. Let's suspend disbelief for a second and say that she forgot about the toast she had with her breakfast. Her doctor told her she could have 1 piece of whole grain toast a day. Here's an example of how that looks. 95 calories, maybe 16 to 17 grams of carbs, 4 grams of protein, and under 2 grams of fat. And remember, these are the macros for one portion of the crust the way she prepared it. Look at these numbers, they don't even come close. So the big question is she honestly thinking that she's making healthier meals? Or does she just not understand how all of this works? A big part of why I do these videos is because looking at macros is something that I do for myself. As somebody who's trying to lose weight, I try really hard to make things balanced. So for me, if I know I'm going to have a bigger, heavier meal or something like this, I do it on a gym day. I don't know, personally, I'm glad she's going back to Canada, because that means she has more potential for help in the nutrition department. Drop me a line in the comments and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you.